Call to order, workshop, Board of Directors, Vallecitos Water District, Monday, December 9th at 1:01. Pledge of Allegiance, Director Sinella.
Ready? Begin. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. And Craig will push your button.
Sorry.
Roll call is made. We're all here. There is no public for public comment. Item for discussion, consideration of water rate adjustment.
Did you adopt the agenda?
Yeah.
Oh, did I miss?
No, I don't think you adopted.
No,
Yeah, no. Oh,
we
I
need
thought
to
you said
move to
yes.
adopt the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Consider adopted. General Manager.
Thank you, President Martin. Good afternoon, Board. The purpose of today's workshop is to provide the Board with an opportunity to consider potential water rate adjustments and scenarios. No action is being requested at today's workshop, and no rate changes can be implemented until we go through the very rigorous procedures outlined in Proposition 218. Staff's plan is to place an item on the December 18th board meeting, and that would be for the board to review and approve the public notice that would go out to initiate the Prop 218 process for rate increases. As the board recalls, the budget that was approved back in June was based on the assumption that there would be rate increases starting in the second half of the current fiscal year, so basically sometime after January. That was the assumption in the budgetary process. The district last conducted a Prop 218 process back in 2017, and that culminated in a water rate adjustments over a 2-year period. The first adjustment was on January 31st of 2018, and the second was January 1st of 2019, and no additional increases to either water or wastewater rates is allowed without going through another Prop 218 process. And you may recall that during the last 218 process, there were no adjustments to wastewater rates. They stayed the same, and you'll see that's what we're proposing this time as well. So at today's workshop, staff will do several things. One is we're going to show the board the primary cost drivers in the budget, so that just a reminder of where we've been from a budgetary process. We'll provide the board with the anticipated revenue requirements over the next 5 years. We'll look at possible water rate options and the revenues they would generate. And important with that, we'll see the impacts that those rate options would have on district reserves. We will also show the board how the district rates compare with other member agencies within San Diego County with a focus on our surrounding agencies. So we'll look at both, the whole county and just kind of our neighbors. And we'll also facilitate a conversation about the Prop 218 process, the legal notice, the schedule for rates, what the notice should look like, things like that. So as I mentioned, staff is not looking for specific direction, but we are looking for input that will hopefully help facilitate and guide the conversation that would take place on next Wednesday, on the 18th. The district is currently undertaking a cost of service study, but that's not what we're here to talk about today. Just want to let the board know that we're not abandoning that process, but that's a very in-depth process that's probably going to have a lot of public outreach, and that cost of service study will be utilized for rates that will become effective in 2021, not in 2020, which is the rate increase that we're talking about today. So with that, unless the board has any specific questions about what I kind of gave an overview about, I'm going to turn it over to Wes.
I have a
Yes,
question.
yes.
Yeah, I didn't understand this was going to be a 1-year 218.
So with that, we're going to talk today.
So
So,
we talked about, but I thought you just said it is going to be.
well, so the one we're talking about today would be effective in 2020, and that would be for a 1-year period while we're conducting the cost of service study for the future rates, which would probably be a multi-year Prop 218 process.
Have we discussed that before?
Yes, discussed in the Finance Committee.
No, well, I mean, we've discussed a lot of things in the Finance Committee, but I don't think we've made any kind of determination if this, what we're discussing today, was going to be a 1-year, 2-year, 3-year. you know.
Well, that's
we
at
never-
the board's discretion. The staff's plan was to look at a 1 year while we were conducting the cost of service study, which looks at different things that aren't included in our current model. Doesn't mean our current model is wrong, it's just we could look at things in a different way, and you would need to do a new cost of service study. And we had that conversation at the Finance Committee meeting that talked about kind of a bridge between our current rates, needed short-term rates, and then the long-term perspective.
Okay, so today they're gonna explain to us what's gonna go in the cost of service that we didn't do before, but now we're gonna do, but both of them the correct way to do it.
It's not correct or incorrect, and no, we're not going to talk about what's in the proposed cost of service study. We're talking about rate adjustments based on the current model, the current cost of service study, and the current rate model that could be implemented for a 1-year period to address any revenue shortfalls while we're conducting the more comprehensive cost of service study, which we've discussed on numerous occasions at the Finance
I
Committee.
just hadn't heard you say that, I was there, but I don't remember you saying that we're gonna do 1 year, and while we're doing this other one until the second year. Don't ever remember that. You might have,
Okay.
maybe I was just out of town.
Yeah, and I agree with Director Martin. I know we've talked about a lot, like I said earlier, a lot of different scenarios and options, but I thought this was part of this workshop was to also include, potentially discussing a 2 or 3 year, not just a 1 year. I didn't realize that was kind of a foregone conclusion at this point.
It's not. I mean, the board could, it's the board's discretion and pleasure as part of this workshop. If you want us to look at multi-year noticing requirements for the Prop 218 using the current model, we could probably do that. We may have certain limitations, but we can do that. My thought, based on conversations we had, is it was a 1-year plan while we did the more in-depth cost of service study.
And I thought at the last meeting we had, that we actually said that we gave a number on the 1 year, and we had a number for the second year already.
I don't remember the number for the second year already.
2 and 3.5.
I think you had a placeholder for, as far as the budget was concerned.
It could, well, yeah.
2 and 3.5 is numbers.
Well, you'll see that in the presentation you're about to see, that when we did as part of the budgetary process and the previous cost of service, we did a 5-year, we projected out in the future. But those weren't noticed from a 218 perspective, so we can't act on those without some kind of a 218 process. That doesn't mean the model didn't look ahead, and you'll see those numbers today. Okay, so no further questions. I'll turn it over to Wes, and he can kind of jump into the details.
Good afternoon, President Martin, members of the board. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
You're sitting up nice, thank you.
So this should be an exciting presentation. We get to talk about rates today. And I think unlike most of my other presentations, this one will be more graphical and less numbers, so it might be a little more exciting. We'll see how it goes, though. So I did, it's actually not up on the screen.
They're up on this screen, so
I'll guide you through it over here.
it's not there. Gee, it's not even a year old.
What, did you take that one home for Christmas?
I don't think we paid enough for it.
Oh, good.
We didn't pay enough for him to have him work for more than a year. Could we have the department that was rolling out that other one, rolling out again? They're all on workman's comp now.
Okay, so we got a picture now. So up on the left screen over there, my left, your right. You can see I got a new graphic in there that says workshop for you. That's specifically for this meeting.
Oh, exciting.
The workshop's going to.
That's really good,
Okay, so as I mentioned, we're going to talk about a rate discussion today. And just to go over the agenda real quick, first I'm going to do a little background, and this is basically going to be a budget refresher. It's been a while since we approved the budget back in June. So I'll show some slides that are straight from there and just discuss some of the process. Then after that, I'll talk about the water operating expenses. There were no sewer rate increases proposed in the budget or included in the budget calculations, so today we're just going to be focusing on water. After that, I'll talk about reserve balances and days in cash, what the effects were per the budget. And then Mike's going to give a presentation on the impact of the proposed rate increases on the customer water bill. We'll look at a rate survey with neighboring agencies and I believe like 22 other agencies. Then we'll talk about some scenarios. And then Todd from Raftalis is here to give a short presentation. And finally, we'll go over the next steps, and we'll take a look at the Prop 218 that's been handed out to you. So this is the budget process and calendar. You've seen this before. This was in the budget presentation. The reason I'm showing this is just to kind of refresh your memory. It was a 7-month process. We had 8 meetings, and staff worked diligently with the Finance Committee and the board to eliminate all unnecessary costs. So only those costs that are absolutely necessary to provide sustainable and reliable water to customers are included in the budget. And then we had our finish line guy. He's the most exciting part. I had to keep him in there. This next slide it's straight from page 10 of the budget. This was also in the budget presentation. This shows the water operating expenses. The total for that was $44.3 million. As you can see here, 73% of our water operating expenses are from water purchases. That's uncontrollable. It's a pass-through cost. We get those. We have to pay them, so we can't control that cost. The remaining 27%, if I break that down, well, before I talk about that, I have this slide up on the right. Hopefully you can see that. Water purchases is $32.2 million, which is 73%. Also, we have pumping costs, which are costs to get the water to our customers. We can't avoid that, so it's really uncontrollable as well. So if you add the two together, 75% of our costs approximately are uncontrollable costs. Now, looking at that further, and I'm actually going to go into the 27%. So the other operating expenses of $12.1 million, it's just the total of the 3 small slices there. That's 27%. So included in that is salaries and benefits. Salaries and benefits is $9.4 million just for water alone. That's 21%. That's pretty much an uncontrollable cost per the MOU. So if you subtract salaries and benefits and pumping costs from the operating expenses, you get $1.8 million, or about 4% of our costs that are controllable costs. And I think that just kind of shows a testament to our work. We've really reduced the cost and narrowed it down to 4% of total costs. So this is just another pie chart to show it in a different way. And you can see water and pumping, again, 33.1, 75%. The labor is 21%, and all other costs are only $1.8 million. So I really feel like we've cut as much as we could, and we've been very good at preparing this year's approved budget. So this next slide shows the water reserves. These are the budgeted water reserves with a 5-year forecast. This was also presented during the budget presentation. And you can see in years 19, 20, or 19, we're close to the ceiling. And just a refresher, the floor is 3 years of capital replacements. The ceiling is 10 years for water. So that's just capital assets that need to be replaced over the next 3 years or 10 years. And that's established per our reserve policy. So in 19, we were close to the ceiling at $34 million, but we decided to pay the PERS off.
Could you just slow down a teeny bit?
Sure.
And just repeat what you said on that last one? You said it so fast.
Sure. You mean about the floor and the ceiling?
range, yes, what you're saying about the
Sure.
Thank you.
So the floor is 3 years of capital replacement for water replacement assets. The ceiling is 10 years. And that's been set for our reserve policy, and it's pretty much, it's sort of an industry standard, but it depends on the entity and the type of infrastructure that you have. So 19, 20, 20, 21, and 22.
Director Elthorpe?
Wes, I also had a question on that. Does this reserve chart assume it was 3 or 3.5%
That's a great question.
worked into the budget?
Yes, so this is the approved budget reserves.
And that was to take effect January 1?
Correct.
Okay.
And there are other assumptions made in the outer years as well, and Mike's going to show what assumptions those were.
And I have a question. You go back to the previous slide, and I'm sorry, and you guys do one more. You guys do a fantastic job, awesome job. Thanks for all the representation. Thanks for all the numbers. You're great. You're awesome. However, when you say operating expense 27%, that's the way it is. Nothing we can do about that. That's not true. When you say salaries and benefits 21%, nothing we can do about that. That's not true. The only thing we can't do anything about really is the pumping cost and the water cost. Everything else, the board can do something about. Not that we're not going to, not that we haven't, but we can. But you made it sound like, hey, that's the way it is, and it's not.
So hopefully I didn't say that incorrectly, but I meant to say exactly what you said.
Okay.
Water purchases and pumping, uncontrollable. We can't do anything about those. Those are pretty much, we get them from the water authority, we have to pay it. Pumping is very similar. We have to get water to our customers. Salaries, the only reason I say that that's pretty much uncontrollable is because we were locked into an MOU and the cost per the MOU. I mean, if there are ways, that's not considered, in my mind, an uncontrollable cost similar to the water purchases and the pumping.
Right.
So I meant to say exactly what you said, and hopefully
Okay.
it clarified.
Thanks, Wes, I appreciate it, thank you.
But if we take salaries and benefits out of that, so if we weren't to make any changes to the MOU and we subtract out pumping costs from those total other, you end up with 1.8, and that ends up with like your materials and supplies and all the numbers we went through down to the $100 line item, and we cut as much as we possibly could, and we have to, so the costs that we have are prudent costs. Okay, so going back to this one, so the dip is as a result of paying off the PERS UAL over the next 3 years. We just paid off $8 million, so that 20 numbers actually already happened. We have a plan, a policy to pay off 4 and then 4 over the next 2 years. But you can see in the budget, we budgeted for recovery coming up in 2023 and 24. That was to get us closer to, in between, further above the floor and closer to the ceiling, just a little bit of recovery there.
Excuse me one more time. So does that include the PERS that we cut down at EWA? The
Yes.
$800,000?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So that number should actually, I think we did it after the budget, so it's not shown in the 19 numbers, but it has been paid, so it's projected in here. So I was gonna say something else based on this, now I can't remember.
Sorry.
That's okay. I guess I'll move forward from here then, let's see. So the next thing is, and looking at the reserve balances and the days in cash, as we mentioned in the budget process, those are essential for the rating criteria. We have to look at days in cash, and we determined that, and I'll get to that in a minute, but having your reserve balances above the floor and below the ceiling. Oh, the thing I did want to say about this is, we recently brought on the asset management supervisor. One of the reasons we brought on that position was to take a look at our assets in the district and value them, and to see what will need to be replaced in the future. So we currently have our best estimate based on depreciation. Useful lives depreciated over, in the budget, we say it's a 40-year useful life or 20-year useful life. And over the next 3 years, that's how many we need to replace. That establishes our floor. The value of those assets is based on the historical cost of the asset, ENR'd up to current day's dollars. So ENR is the Engineering News Record Index, which is an estimate of the inflationary value over that time period, so to speak. So it's an estimate of the value. This new position will be looking at our assets and potentially giving us the actual value of replacement, and that number could be higher or lower than our floor. So we need to keep that in mind when we're going through this process, because if the floor were to raise and we get too close to the floor, we don't want to do that. We want to try to stay above the floor. Anyways, that was just kind of an aside note. Moving on to the next slide. This shows the days in cash per the approved budget. This again was shown in the budget presentation. And during the budget process, we talked to our financial advisors. I actually called Fitch, and you can see the orange line is actually the AA median rating per Fitch. So they say you should have 561 days in cash. Well, I don't think we've ever been close to that. And you can see here, going back to 2009, we've never been close to 561. But moving forward, in discussions with them and meeting other criteria, we set 300 days in cash as our minimum in order to maintain our AA plus rating. And per the approved budget, we're above that 300 over the next 5 years, so we feel like we're in a good position, and that was part of the whole budgeting process. Now, Mike is actually going to talk about the impact of the proposed increases that are included in the approved budget on the customer's water bill.
Thank you, Wes. As Wes mentioned, this is going to be based on the approved budget that we approved back in June. So this is our current, when we talk average single-family residence, let me just clarify that so that we're all on the same page. It's a 5/8" customer that uses 13 units of water per month. And that's pretty standard amongst San Diego County. For sewer, we have a flat sewer rate. Other agencies will charge either a flat sewer rate or a flat plus a commodity charge. If it is sewer, if they're on a commodity charge, the average is about 7 units of water going through the sewer system. So I just wanted to kind of let you know where that stands. So our average customer right now that uses 13 units of water pays $128.47 per month. With the, yes.
What percentage of customers is that?
That, if you look down at the, okay. So our 5/8" customers, single-family residents is probably about 80-ish%. I can get you an exact number, but it's probably 80% or maybe even a little higher.
It's 83% in the last.
Okay, yeah, it's a little higher than 80% of our total customer base.
Okay.
Falls under this category.
Thank you.
And on the bottom, real quick, I just have a graphic. Of all of our customers that are single-family residents only, about 70% of the bills that go out fall with 13 units or less per month. So about 30% of our bills use more than 13 units per month. So that just kind of gives you an estimate of about how many people this applies to. So the current bill is $128 using these parameters. The proposed bill would show a 3.5% increase in water and ready-to-serve charges. And as Wes mentioned, there would be no increase in the sewer projected. So the projected bill based on the budget would go up, next column, about $3.14 per month. And percentage-wise, the water, the top two lines are the water portion of 3.5%, sewer of 0%, for an all combined bill of about a 2.4% increase. Any questions on that before I move forward?
Not a question, just a statement. The water's gonna go up 3.5%, ready to serve is going up 3.5%.
Correct. So then my next slide, I know there's a lot of things on here, so I'm just going to highlight a couple of them. These are the 22 agencies that we surveyed. And I just want to, the red bar is the average within San Diego County of these 22 agencies. So the average water sewer bill is about $156 per month. Vallecitos right now, we stand at, as I mentioned, the $128 per month. And the proposed with the budgeted increases would bring us up to $131. What's important to notice is that we didn't change positions in here. We're still in the bottom third. We're still, I think it's 7th on this chart. So even with the 3.5% budgeted increase. So I also wanted to show, okay, that's great. That's the 22 agencies. What about our neighboring agencies or those that we use this comparison with? Again, the average, and this is the average not of these 7 or 8 that I have here, but the average of all 22. The average again was $155. And again, the numbers aren't changed, but it's just to show you our relative place within these jurisdictions are from 128 up to 131. So it just shows you relatively where we stand within these neighboring agencies. And
If I can make a quick comment on that, you'll notice the two agencies to the left, Carlsbad and Vallecitos, those are the two agencies that buy very expensive water. We have the most expensive water supply costs amongst all of our peers because of that desalinated purchase cost. So it's pretty good to be anywhere close to the left side of that column, or left side of the graph, given that is a pretty good accomplishment.
And I don't have handouts for you, and I don't put it into this presentation, but I did pull out some neighboring agencies. They did, the ones that did the recent Prop 218s, and I would like to kind of make note of it. Poway just did a Prop 218 and with water rates effective this past March, and their average water bill went up, I believe it was 5.25%. They have another one for 2020, but I haven't gotten that one yet. The city of San Diego, their rate increase for this year, September 1st, is 6.28%. This one is Liebenhain. Liebenhain did a rate increase. Theirs is a 5-year Prop 218. And over the 5-year period, their Tier 1 water is going to go up 53%. For just this fiscal year, March 1st, their Tier 1 water is 21% increase. Their overall increase, because only some of the waters in Tier 1 is about 4.25 to 5% increase overall. And then Ramona just did a 5-year Prop 218, and their increase included not only just regular increase, but pass-through increases. Their district increases can go up by 46% over 5 years, and their pass-through increases can go up another 70% over the 5 years, so a total of over 110% increase over that 5-year period. Not to say that they would go that, but that's the maximum amount that their board approved. So that's just some of the neighboring agencies that I got to Prop 218s.
One question, Mike, not all agencies use 748 gallons per unit,
Right.
versus Escondido does not.
Those that use some of them do use 1,000 gallons of water, and I converted it. So everything in here is on our scale of 748.
Great.
So those that have used, and then there's some agencies that do bi-monthly, some that do 1,000 units, some that do a hybrid of certain things, and I converted it all as if they were 748 gallons of water and as they were monthly. So that's what they show.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so that way it makes it, apples to apples versus.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So we talked about the average single-family residence, 13 units. What would it be on a low user? So I get a chart for that, and this is the same chart that you saw for the 13 units. So a person that uses 6 units of water, and on the bottom you'll see about 1/3 of our bills that go out on a monthly basis use 6 units of water or less. So their increase, again, it's still 3.5% water and RTS, but and 0 sewer, but the combined bill on those would go up about 2.1%.
Like 80% are our average customers, and 1/3 of our customers are lower than 6 units? How does that equate?
The 80%? Oh, okay. Yeah, so of the 80%, 30% or 1/3 of those are using less than 6 units of water. I had another one in there that showed that the 33% of the 83%, but then it's just too many numbers.
Okay, no,
So-
that's great, thank you.
So that's our low user. We saw our average user. So what about a high user? So our high user, we just picked 42 units of water. So our 42 unit water person would see, again, the 3.5% again across the board for water and ready to serve, but their combined bill would go up 3.1%.
Wow.
And in any case, any of our customer class, single family, irrigation, commercial, using 900 units of water, using 1 unit of water, the maximum they would see because of this model is 3.5%. And we do have some customers that are water only, that they don't have sewer. There's 1,000-ish customers that are like that. They would see a 3.5% because there is no sewer applied to that. So I just kind of wanted to give you a sampling of the customer mix and the maximum type of increase that they would see.
So our rate increase really is 3.5%.
For water, yes.
That's our rate increase.
Next, I wanted to show you, we talked about this and we alluded to this earlier, the 3.5%. This is the revenue requirement per the budget. Now, only the first year is really what we're looking at. When we do a budget, we'll project out for 5 years, but when the board sees that, they're not adopting a 5-year budget. We're just looking at that as for financial planning. And to get the revenue requirements that we needed for those 5 years, this is where I've talked about a 3.5% to 4% increase for the next 5 years. That doesn't mean that the board adopted those. We didn't do a Prop 218 for that. We didn't notice that. And these rates are not set in stone. These are what would be needed to achieve those revenue requirements that were in the budget. So you'll see for the 1920, we had a 3.5% increase, going up to about a 3.6, 3.7, 3.5, and about a 3 for the subsequent 4 years. So I just wanted to show you, this slope looks really big, like it's a huge increase, but if you notice the scaling, it goes from $40 million revenue up to 55 on the left side. I wanted to kind of show you a scale, a full scale from 0 to 55, just to show you that it's a slight incline, just to give you a kind of a perception of really where this stands. So I'll go back to the initial 40 million to 55, so just kind of keep them aware that it's not that steep of an incline. I'll go ahead and turn it over to General Manager Prohm unless there are any questions.
I have one.
Director Evans?
My only question is, and maybe it's not the right place to ask it, but you know, you're showing the 350 up and then down to 296 over this 5-year span. When you were giving us the increases for Poway and San Diego and Olevenhagen, you said over 5 years it was X amount. So what would this be for us over a 5-year span?
I can get you within 1% of that. It wouldn't be these summed up necessarily because there's compounding.
Well, I'm
but
not
it would
gonna-
be about 17, 18, 19% probably.
Overall?
Overall.
And you said some of the others did 110 and
Ramona had
53 and...
Ramona had 39 in their charges and up to 70.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Ramona, I think it was 40 up to 70 and pass through. Yeah, that's Ramona. And OMWD had, for their tier 1 water, was 53%. San Diego, I only have 1 year's worth.
Okay.
And then Poway, I only have 1 year's worth.
1 year's worth. Okay. Thank you for that comparison. Appreciate it.
Now I'll turn it over to General Manager Prohm.
Yeah, so ideally, when we go through the budgetary process, one of our goals that we approach the board with is to get your expenses to match your revenues. So that on a yearly basis, you're not You're not collecting too much money and you're not going negative. So when you look at this line that Mike left us off with, that blue line can represent what we expected to spend in any given year over the next 5 years. So that's our expenditure. And ideally, as I mentioned, the revenue would be the same, it would match that. But we looked at a scenario where we did not include a rate increase in January of 2020. And what impacts would that have over a 5-year period? And that's what this green line tries to show. So if you look in the FY 1920, on the left side, assuming we don't do a rate increase in 2020, but we do a rate increase over the next 4 years in the same amount as we did in the previous years, for example, or in the budget approvals. So if you look in 2021, we projected a 3.61% increase. We assume the same thing for financial planning purposes on this scenario. In subsequent years, the same thing. We matched the rate increase, but we didn't get the first year rate increase. So what that means is you're behind the curve. In any year, you miss out on the first year, it hurts you every year thereafter. Now you could make up this gap. If your expenses were up here and your revenue's down here, you could go to the general, or the reserves, and you can take that money to backstop it, but you'd have to do that every year, to backstop it every year. And if you look at that second, the green line in the table below the graph, that shows the cumulative effects over a 5-year period of not doing a rate increase in 2020, but then only doing the rate increases that you had projected for the 4 subsequent years. And over that 5-year period, you'd have an almost $8 million shortfall, which would all have to come from the reserves. And we already Wes showed you the reserve impacts, mostly due to PERS, but other factors too, that are already decreasing, and that's the further decrease you'd see. And if we never corrected that going forward, even beyond the lines you see on this chart, almost $2 million, about $1.9 million per year revenue shortfall you'd see. So that's the do nothing in 2020 approach and the impacts it would have. Now, another thing you could do is do nothing in 2020, but then do an accelerated rate increase in the next year that would get you on the same revenue generation that you would have otherwise been on if you had done a rate increase in 2020. So you'd have a 0% increase in January of 2020, but then you'd have to do a 7.35% increase in 2021 to get you back on that curve, and then you'd have to do the same rate increases you would have otherwise done, the 3.7, the 3.47, and then the 2.96. The impacts of that is about an $830,000 impact to the reserves and the requirement to increase rates in the second year by over 7%, which we're trying to avoid. So that's 2 scenarios we looked at. Another scenario we looked at was to say, well, what if we just came up with a nominal 2% increase in 2020, and then we did a accelerated rate increase in 2021, and then got back on the curve. So if you did that, you'd have to, in the year 2, you'd do a 2% in year 1, and then you'd have to do a 5.17% rate increase in year 2 before you're back on that curve. And the financial impact of that is about $390,000 that would have to come from the reserves. So this is just trying to give the board a perspective of the impacts of deferring rate increases on both future rate increase requirements and on draws on reserves. So I think that's the part I wanted to cover, and I'm going to turn it back over to Wes, unless the board has any questions about that.
Okay, so continuing with this scenario, if we say there were no rate increases for this year, and we plug that into the budget and we look at the forecasted reserves going forward, this is the same slide you saw before. This is actually the one from the budget, so these are the approved numbers, and you can see the dip going down to 22 and then the recovery, so this is what it looks like per the approved budget. This is the existing one. Now, if we don't do a rate increase, this is what it's going to look like. So our reserves over the next 4 years dip down to $24 million by year 2024, which is only $6 million above our floor. We're not covering our revenue requirement, and we wouldn't be plugging anything for recovery, so we end up coming really close to the floor. And keep in mind, the strength of your reserves, your days in cash, management, other factors like that determine your rating criteria. So doing this could put our AA+ rating at risk. And if you look further at the days in cash, this is what days in cash currently looks like per the approved budget based on the numbers that we had approved back in June. here's the minimum of 300 days in cash, so we're staying above that for the approved budget. If we don't do a rate increase, we end up going below the minimum. So we end up at 269, 277, and 271 in the outer years, which is below the recommended minimum of 300 days in cash, which could potentially hurt our rating criteria, or our rating of AA+. This is not something that would be recommended. We'd have to make it up in other areas. We do have things like we paid off the PERS, we have low debt, but sacrificing your AA+ rating can affect your ability to issue debt in the future. And we have budgeted to issue debt of $28 million in 2023. If we go below a AA+, it could potentially affect our ability to do that. So it's really not recommended. But again, that's why we had the budget recommendations here, and this is just a scenario to show what would happen if we don't do the rate increase. I think that's all I have for my presentation. If you have questions for me, happy to answer them.
Yeah, is that just not doing the one rate increase?
This is not doing this rate increase and then doing the ones that were assumed in the budget.
Okay.
As
So it's that green
It's the
line
green
kind of
line.
parallel it.
It's just foregoing the one
So it's this
increase
year.
in the current budget.
But the next 4 years doing the rate increases you would have otherwise done in those same 4 years.
Okay.
So if we were to do this right here, you'd have that $8 million shortfall you can see on your screen. That's what that's resulting.
Director Sinella?
But kind of along the same lines as Director Althart, does that mean, does this capture that makeup in year two? The higher, like the 5% or 7%?
So if we did that, if you were to do the 7% in year two, you'd end up right back here. So
Right back to- okay.
your 2023 would be the 28 million. So I didn't show another graph with that because you'd just be back on track with the 28 million, but you'd have to do a 7.57% rate increase to get there.
Okay, so this is, so kind of go back and forth, toggle back and forth. I would have thought that there would have been a bigger change than that. Just interesting.
Yeah, it ends up being the $8 million over the 5 years, so that's what the effect is. And since we're talking about 28 million, it goes down to 23, so it's 5 million that year.
So theoretically, this is purely theoretically, if you were to drop from a AA+ to a AA, and we're gonna go out for how much, you think?
$28 million.
What's the difference in our payment? You got the numbers guy next to you. What's the difference in our payment between a AA and AA+?
So the risk, and these are based on conversations with financial advisors. No, I'm just letting you know that this isn't my expertise. I've had conversations, we've gone through this. The risk is not so much the payment or the rate of interest you'll be charged. Typically, a AA+ and a AA would have the same rate.
Right.
You might get 3%. It may not be that big of a variance. There might be a small variance, but it isn't going to be a lot. The risk really lies in the fact that they may not issue you debt. It's like, think about it, if you had a 650 credit score and I had a 780, if I go to issue debt, they're going to give me the debt before they're going to give it to you. So if we go to to issue debt with a AA-, they might say, you know what, it's a risky market right now. We're not giving you 28 million. And then we may not get the debt we need, and that could impact our ability to operate.
Thank you. Interesting, I was in a class in the last seminar, and they discussed this at length, and that was always the answer. Ooh, be wary, you might not get it.
So I went to the debt symposium down in Mission Valley to talk about this very thing. And overall, what they said is that the rates you'll get as far as interest goes are about the same, and they don't vary that much, and even a larger range of ratings. However, your ability to actually issue the debt is what's affected by it. So that's all I have for my presentation, unless you have other questions for me. Todd from Raftalis will give a short presentation to follow up.
I just have one.
Yep. Director.
Just out of curiosity, early on, you had said that about, let me think what it was. The average controllable costs for us was 20-some%?
It's way back, but I'll get there.
23%?
27.
27%.
27%.
In comparing us with the similar agencies, is that good or bad or average or?
That's a good question.
We haven't done that.
We haven't done that analysis. My feeling is it would be pretty typical. Most water agencies are heavy on the water purchase costs of part of their budget.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. maybe sometime you can toss
can-
that through
yeah.
an email.
I'll look at the water.
They don't know what they're doing.
No other questions, but Wes, on behalf of myself, you did a fantastic, you and Mike and your whole team, fantastic job on putting all this together
Thank you, sir.
without tweaking too much in one direction or the other.
A snappy presentation.
Thank you. A lot more exciting with the grass and stuff.
Yeah, well, popcorn would have been nice, but you're right close to the top now.
The little ghost running through the ribbon, that was very, very nice. Very creative.
Well,
Okay, so, sorry, go ahead. No, your turn.
finish.
I was just gonna say, Todd's actually got a presentation to give too, so we're not done yet. But,
Right.
you got any questions?
I was just going to say that you could do one small improvement, and if you look at this, you have no women on your, in your pictures. And although I quite accept that, there's many who would be upset by that. So you need to draw a little person in a,
Yeah, fix that.
Thanks.
Put your picture in there for next one. Okay. Todd, actually, if you want to.
And none of the-
Podium or you want?
I'm going to address this guy right now. Put a little long hair on him. Oh, yeah, there you go.
Do we have a handout? We're gonna follow a bouncing ball here?
No, I made it most recent.
Yeah, I don't have one. You emailed it to me?
You can tell you three have been working together very long hours, long days, long nights, and neither of you have razors.
I'm mistaken, it's still.
Yeah, I don't have a file. No, I don't have it. So now would be a good time for popcorn probably then. It's intermission.
How about tap dance?
While we're trying to kill time, one of the things we've done is to look at other agencies and what they've done in their Prop 218 notice. Conversations we've had at the Finance Committee, that issue has come up, what should it look like? So we do have some samples, if the board would like to take a look at them, I could pass these out, so.
Definitely would like to.
Here's
I asked Joe from VID, Vista. I said, so how do you do yours? She said, we tie ours to the CPI every year. So we don't have to go out to a 218 unless we need more than that. That doesn't seem right.
You can do that, I would guess well, you have to show that the CPI is an indicator of the costs and the need that you have for financing. You can't just arbitrarily say, we're gonna raise it by the CPI. You've got to show that the CPI is a good indicator of your overall costs. You can't develop a mechanism, a revenue generation mechanism that far exceeds the cost that you have. So, but you can do that as a component of a pass-through approach for a multi-year. You can say, we're gonna pass through water authority costs and some percentage to cover our internal costs. For example, most of our internal costs, if it's a big chunk of it may be labor, you can tie it to the CPI that may be an indicator for our COLAs. So that would be acceptable.
Well, could we check with Vista and find out what they do? Because this is the second time she's told us to me. 2 years ago, she said the same thing, and it didn't make sense. It still doesn't make sense, but somehow that she's doing, and she's the type of person that would know what's going on.
Right, yeah, we can reach out
She
to
does her homework.
Vista.
Yeah, reach out to Vista and say, what are you tying to the CPI? She said, we don't do 218s unless we need one.
Mr. President,
Yes, sir.
and also, I happened to mention this to Gary Arant in Valley Center. He's done a 5-year program, but his potential is that they raise it at 5% every year.
Right.
And if they don't need to get above 5%, then it passes through without a 218. Did I hear him correctly?
I don't know what you heard
Well, I
specifically,
mean,
so I
but
can't.
could we do that? We could do 218, we're gonna raise our rates no more than 5% for the next 5 years. And if we decide that in a year or two, we're only gonna need to raise a 2.5%, we don't need to do a 218?
I think, Luffy may know, but I think Valley Center projects their revenue needs for a 5-year period and then sets the rates. And they can raise their rates on the band noticed, provided they don't exceed the rate set forth. So if they say it's going up to 5%, they can raise it on a compendium up to 5%, but no more than that. But it's still based on a projected cost of service over that 5-year period. Like your study is only projected over a 2-year period.
Right. Okay.
So the graph that we were given showing 5%, 5 years, we just had a graph that is showing 5 years with a percentage on each one of them. If we just said 4% for the next 5 years based on that graph, we could do a 5-year one
You do a 5-year one, just
at 4% a year.
just with those exact numbers. though.
Yeah, I think what you would do is you would put in what the maximum rate is, so
Right.
whether it's a 5% increase or whatever, but that would be tied to what your projected cost of
Well,
service increase
projected
would
cost,
be.
staff gave us.
Yeah,
Staff gave us our projected cost. We have those.
Well, they've
You
given
have
you
the
your
revenue
projected
requirement.
revenue requirements. The next piece of this is they got to tell you what the cost of study analysis of that is, so that you're allocating your revenue requirements to the cost causation components of your rates.
So the
I can
numbers
let-
you gave us for 5 years out are fictitious.
He's not saying they're fictitious, he's just saying you have to apply it to, say, the meter size and the tiers. So you have to apply it that way, you can't just do a straight across the board increase based on our budgeted assumptions.
Yeah, we were looking at it
What
from-
are your projected water demands going to be over that 5-year periods, and what bands are those projected water demands going to be, and what are causing the rate increase, or what are causing those cost components to be impacted?
So it's the breakdown of the total.
So that's what Valley Center and Vista are in all probability doing. If they're not going out with 218s.
No, they're going out with 218s. You can't increase water rates without having gone through a 218 process. How they conduct their 218 process may be different than other agencies.
and what, they probably adopted the schedule of rates, so they adopted what the max rate is for each year based off of the 218 analysis. If you do it that way, you only have to do it once, and put out in your notice what the rate is going to be in each year. Similar to those pass-throughs for inflation or for wholesale increases, which is another way that other agencies do it. But they did do that analysis and calculation for each of the years that they're covering in their notice.
Is that difficult to do?
Well, it takes time.
No, I mean, we did it for 2 years.
Yeah, we did.
Do 1 218 for however many years you want to do.
Right.
Up to 5.
You'd add 3 more years to what you did last.
Right. And remember, the 218 is the maximum that you could do in any given year. So if you find out through whatever changes occur in the future that you don't need to go that high, you'll go with lower. And I believe that's what we did in our second year of the last one, didn't we?
It wasn't this past one, it was the one before that.
The one before. So we have the history of not going up to the maximum if our expenses don't rise to the level we thought they were.
So I apologize for the delay, I think we're all set to go now. And this is Todd Cristiano from Raftellus.
President Martin, Directors, good afternoon. Oh, the red means it's on. Good afternoon. I'm Todd Cristiano from Raftellus, and we are assisting the district with the cost of service study for 2020. I have just a few slides. Unfortunately, no pictures or shapes, just a lot of text. So hopefully it'll still be interesting for everyone. Just some background, the way we're looking at it, we're kind of coming in outside looking in perspective, and we're going to assist district staff with updating and making sure the current model is updated with the most recent information. The fiscal year 20 increase is a result of a number of items here, and Wes identified those. Treated water purchases increased, maintenance of the distribution system, meeting regulatory requirements and general operations and those sorts of things. The 3.5% revenue adjustment will be effective for 4 months of fiscal year 20. The last cost of service was completed in 2017, and in that cost of service, there was a 5-year schedule of rates developed. So in this model, they developed and did cost allocations to each of the customer classes or by meter size for the 5 years, considering what the projected revenue requirement was going to be in each of those years. Some key things that come out of that that's very important with the cost of service analysis is ensuring that the purchased water costs are assigned to the appropriate tiers, as well as the infrastructure-related costs. The facilities required to deliver those water purchases are assigned to the correct tiers to achieve both interclass equity and intraclass equity. Interclass equity being the equity between the customer classes or the meter sizes, the intra-class equity being between the low-volume users and the high-volume users. They also allocated costs based on customer-related costs, and those are the costs to read a meter, send a bill out, send field services out, and that sort of thing. With that model, the district developed a rate report summarizing the findings, conclusions, and recommendations of the 5-year cost of service analysis, which is a very important component of Prop 218, is having that documentation. Like I said, it was calculated for the 5-year period, 2018 through 22. The rates for each year were based on the overall revenue requirement, which were projected at the time, based on a 5-year projection. Obviously, those projections can change depending on different demand patterns and costs and that sort of thing. It also included changes in major assumptions each year in terms of the type of water that was going to be purchased and the amount, as well as demand factors and peaking factors and that sort of thing. So each of the years represented a slight change in the assumptions just based on best information available at the time. Upon our review of this report, which is very important for the rates that are being developed for fiscal year 20, is that the district is encouraged to document all the information from the study they're doing now for the fiscal year 2020 Prop 218 rate increase before publication. So I'll pause there and see if there's any questions. So our role here today was to review that report and just make sure that going forward it can be updated with the most current information for this fiscal year 20 and be able to show the revenue requirement and then show how the costs are allocated and that sort of thing for this fiscal year 20 revenue adjustment. Any questions? Okay. This is just a comparison of the rates. You've seen the typical bills, but these are the actual rates here. The 3 blank cells down there should be the 1118 times 3.5%, the 5.87 times 3.5%, and 257.33 times 3.5%. I'm not sure why that's not showing up here. The fiscal year 2020 rates are anticipated to maintain the same tiered structure, no change there.
Sorry to interrupt.
Sure.
These charts that he's showing you now are actually part of the 218 notice that we handed out before the meeting started. So all these tables are in that publication.
And each of these tiers here were based off an analysis of water demands by meter size. So these tiers were not arbitrarily developed. There was a basis for these in terms of the type of demand, average demand, and peak month demand. Here's a comparison of the commodity rates, just an increase of 3.5% across the board, Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. And here's this same typical bill that you just saw. It's also in the Prop 218 notice, 3.5%. So just a brief presentation, just wanted to, we are, like I said, we're assisting the district in this process here, and we'll be working with them on the cost of service.
The next slide is just the next steps.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Going forward, and actually today we can talk about the Prop 218 you have in front of you now. If you have recommendations for changing the format, stuff you might want to see in there, any other districts or agencies you've seen that have a different format that you like better. So I figure we have a discussion about that. But the next steps as far as the schedule goes, Our December 18th, we're going to be bringing the 218 notice to you for approval. And then that'll get sent out on February 19th, and then the rates will be effective March 1st, 2020, for that 218. And if you'd like to.
Yeah, question. When is staff, obviously have this all planned out, when is staff planning out sending the one for 2021?
It would depend on the culmination of the cost of service study and that timing. So it would probably be near the very end of 2020 or very early 2021. So we'd be targeting like a January 1st implementation. So somewhere in that time frame, maybe November.
So you're going out for a 218 just prior to the election?
No, that's not what I said. But if you can go out
If
around.
you're targeting for.
If you can go
January.
November, if you can go mid-November after the election, you can get there by January 1st.
Well, and just briefly looking at this, OTI seems to be so much plainer than ours, if you add color to it. Ours has color, which is nice, but I know that's just because we have color. It would be color as well. But it's so much more interesting to read and more open and easy than ours, which is not easy to read, which doesn't tell people right off. I mean, it starts off, number one, what I like about it is it just talks about the water rate increase. There is no sewer rate increase, so you don't need to notice it, in my opinion. All we're noticing is a water rate increase. We're not doing anything with sewer, so why include it? And as you read down, an overall increase of 5.8%. For them, in our case, it would be 3.5%, and the average bill goes up. The first two sentences tells what most people want to know. What's this going to cost me? And it tells it very quickly what it's going to cost you. That's the first one they have is for sewer rates, which they went up with, and the second part is just for the water rates. But then it shows a graph on the very front page of all the different water districts and where their water district is. So it shows that right off the bat to the consumer. It says, hey, here's all the water rates in our county, and look, we're in, well, they're just about halfway, but we're less than halfway. Then when you open it up to page, and it's only 2 pages, unless their legal term doesn't know what they're doing. The second page, very easy to read. That's just my thought. Just make it simple. Because the more you make it confusing, people think you're trying to confuse them. Did you look at all this?
I saw OTIs though.
Okay, Director Sinella.
Yeah, of these samples, that, including ours, I like OTI the best too. The question I had though is this, Director Martin said something about color. Is this how they do it, just black and white?
I don't know.
Or, because I actually like that, I think it'll keep the cost down, for one. But it also, you know what this reminds me of is, like the land use signs that you see like out, like, you know, on pieces of property when there's something that's being proposed or forthcoming or whatever. And so it looks kind of more official and what people are used to looking at, but in addition to that, I just feel like when I'm going through it, it's just easier to follow and easier to understand, so.
Well, I have a bit of a different view. First, I do like ours in color, and I do like in the first paragraph why they're receiving this. It tells them what that's about. The graph, I think, would be a nice addition, and I'm not sure that the wire rates necessary, what do water and sewer rates fund, what is, I'm not sure that all of that is important, if any of it's important. But I do like our third page, which gives you the monthly ready to serve and that, and the back is just a back cover. So I think adding the graph would be good, and I don't know if we need the whys. That's my opinion. And I love the
Greg, another thing?
Yeah, I agree that adding the agency comparison would be good, but I also think it's important to indicate that there's no change in the sewer rate. I think that's good to have.
I think the chart with the comparisons is a good idea as well. I do think we need to tell them there's no sewer charge, because if you don't, someone will assume there might be, and will be a lot of questions on it. I know that the last couple of times we've done this, at least last time, we went through a lot of work on ours, talking about how little writing there should be and how it should be easy for the customer. And I think, I'm kind of with Jim. I like that there's color. I like that it tells you right off the bat. And although I'm a very detailed reader, I find the OTI thing, most people would look at that and go, I'm not going to read it. It's a lot of just plain verbiage. That's my opinion. This is fine, but I don't know that it's any better or worse than our third page.
One thing we try to do is when we put out any kind of public information, I'd like it to be some kind of consistency to it. So the people who've been customers a while, they can look at it and they get a feel for it. They know where to look for information. If we change it this year and then next year we take more, we can change it any year you want to change it. But if you're a customer receiving it, it's like, is this the same thing I got last year? Timing is important. We're going to be taking this forward to the board next week on the 18th. So our time to meet that schedule, I don't know how to get adequate input to make significant changes and get the board to review it, because what we would like to do at the meeting on the 18th is bring the actual notice and have the board approve the actual notice that that's what's going to go out. And I think Lutfi wanted to say, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but Lutfi does want to say something.
And I understand your rush to judgment, but in this particular case, it's an important feature, and if it has to wait another 2 weeks, it has to wait another 2 weeks. Life goes on. We want to get this right. And I think we're having a comparison of other ones is terrific, and I agree with Director Evans. I like the color. I'd like to see the chart showing everyone else's rates on the front. I think that's very important. If it's important that we put notice of public hearing on proposed change in water rates, and right underneath it, no new rates in sewer. So that makes it pretty distinct, pretty cut and dried right away. So people go, oh, okay, my water's going to go up, and then they read on the first paragraph, it tells them how many dollars it's going up to the average customer. I think the example is also well, but I think if you tell them that in the first paragraph, you're trying to get to a lot of them as they pick it up, they see Vallecitos, and they throw it in the trash can. It's just the way they pick up our flyers and look at, you got that 2 seconds to catch their eye. For a lot of people, not people that read everything, but to a lot of people who just go through that now. Director Hernandez.
Again, to keep a timeline going correctly, I personally would believe, I like the changes that Director Martin has, single on the charges and no sewer rate increase. And then you can put that graphic right underneath the average single family and just shuffle everything else down, because I think we do have some area on the back page that we have room to manipulate that back page easily and not get a whole lot of wordsmithing going on for the rest of it. So we can accomplish the color, we can accomplish the simplicity, we can accomplish the graph, and we can accomplish that there is no sewer rate increase.
And just, so the graph you're referring to is the comparison chart?
Yeah, the comparison chart, yeah.
Maybe can I call Lutfi up? That there may be some legal implications that he wants to address. He's our legal advisor on rates, so.
Sure. So as probably a lot of you noticed, there are a lot of complexities in the Prop 218 notice, and that's the most common complaint from property owners, customers, and agencies alike. Ultimately, it's a legal document, so some of those areas that we talked about do need to be in. We do need to explain why the rates are increasing, the basis of them, how they're calculated, and things like that. It's kind of a silly requirement, to be honest, in Prop 218, because the point of Prop 218 is transparency, but what this does is muddy the waters. That being said, the notice is just a bare minimum requirement, so you could always provide other informational, I don't know, things on the website or otherwise that might be able to answer some of those more specific questions. For example, with respect to the sewer rate increase, it might not be a good idea actually to mention it at all if you're not increasing it, because it might open the doors to people thinking that they might be able to protest it again. So that's the sort of thing, as an example, that you might be able to take out of the notice and just have it separate on the district's website. But ultimately, unfortunately, it's going to be kind of a difficult document to read, even in the best of circumstances. And we could always try to come up with other marketing material to address some of those other issues.
Well, I guess from what I understand Director Hernandez is saying, and what I was saying, is OTI's done it in 2 8x10s. We have 3 8x10s. You can get all the information that we've talked about on 2 8x10s. There's just a lot of gobbledygook in here to make it land softer. You know, what are we doing for you? What's doing green? I mean, that's not important. It's not a legal requirement.
No.
There's a lot of the second back pages, not a legal requirement at all. So I guess, I understand what you're saying. We want to make it the legal piece, obviously, but you don't have to add a lot of, people want to know, what are you telling me? Tell me fast before I throw it away.
Right.
And go, oh, another rate increase. So I think I'd like to see if we can get it down to 2 pages with the information that the board wants, as well as the legal, whatever you have to put. The reason why we're increasing it, because our rates go up. Our electricity cost is more.
I'm sorry, I'm seeing this as 2 pages. You want it to be 1 page?
One double-sided page.
I mean, isn't this
No,
just,
this is 3 sides, I count. 1, 2, 3. 3 sides, 1, 2, 3. 4th side is the mailer.
okay.
So I counted 3 pages, but maybe I'm saying it wrong.
No, I think one of the things.
They have 2 pages.
Oh.
One side,
And what
one
was all
side.
the stuff in the front of it, not of importance?
That was their
That's the sewer.
wastewater.
On the sewer,
That's all
okay.
the sewer. We're not doing sewer.
If I may, I wanted to ask, at the beginning of our 218 that's proposed, it says, notice of public hearing on proposed changes in water and sewer service rates and water rate structure. If we're not making changes in the sewer, does that need to be on there?
Yeah, we'll delete that.
Yeah.
Okay. And my second question is, I do believe you have to tell them, provide comments or how to protest. And we have, that's at the back of page 2. I'm wondering if that, and this is for whoever designs it, one of the things, is there any reason, does it have to be there? Or could that be what's put on the back and sharing this space? Or do you not want them to get a thing that says, here comes rate changes and, oh, here's how I complain? I don't know. I'm not sure. But I just, I do see that. And then I agree somewhat with combining it and keeping it simple. But I also know that people need to be taught what we're doing with the raises and why. It's not sufficient to say we're doing an increase and it's better than everybody else's, so be happy. So I do feel a little time spent explaining what's so great about our water district and how efficiently we're doing it if we're only asking for 3.5 compared to 5 and more. I don't want to slim it down to the point it's just, you will get $3 more on your bill every month. Thank you very much.
But I don't know, and I agree with what you're saying, but I think we send out propaganda every 3 months.
Well, what?
Between the pipes. We send it every 3 months, so this is gonna take the place of one of those, I would assume.
Does it?
To save money.
I don't think so. I think it'll be a, I'm sorry.
It'll be a separate note
Oh,
posting
then
and
we can
notice.
send out a whole separate one saying how wonderful we are.
Well, I'm not trying to say how wonderful we are. I was simply saying, I do think when you present a 218 at any time, it's a big educational process. And I hope when people see this, they give it more attention than between the pipes, because this is very important that they.
I agree.
That's
I
just
agree.
my thoughts.
I agree. Director Sinella.
Yeah, you know, I want to reiterate that I really do like the OTI format, but not just their format. If you read what they actually have written, I'll give you just one example. In ours, we talk about, when we're talking about why rate increases are necessary, we say that rate increases to our customers are required to cover the increased cost of wholesale water, electricity cost increases, so, and then on and on. Wholesale water, like, I don't think a lot of our customers really think of it that way and understand it that way, but if you read what OTI says, now I lost it, of course. There it goes. In addition, rate increases cover the cost of acquiring imported water from the Colorado River in Northern California. I think people can wrap their heads around that and understand that a lot more than talking about wholesalers and all that kind of stuff. So I think we should just tell them, I think we should still a lot of this, the way that they have this written here in the OTI notice. But I just like, when I look at these two first pages for the water piece, to me, it just seems cleaner and straight to the point, and the second page here with all the way they have it outlined versus, it just, I don't know, man, it just reads better. Seems cleaner. So, and then I'll shut up about that because I'm probably in the minority, but I do think that there is some stuff that we could borrow from our friends in OTI as far as the language that they've used to explain some of this.
Mr. President.
Director Hernandez.
Here's where my
This new
concern is going
system
to
still
be.
gives me a bad neck every time.
Yeah, here's where my concern is going to be. Unless we figure this out at this meeting,
Right.
we're going to get a change on the 18th, and someone's going to say, I don't like the color of that decimal point,
Right.
and we're going to forestall this again, which is going to push it further down the line, which is not good for all concerned.
You're right. So this is the place to do it.
I would
I'm with
like
you.
to see, I do like what Director Sinella has said about the wholesale water. I think it's necessary to put in the graph. I believe that the virtue of the color is going to catch their attention. And if we eliminate the conversation about sewer entirely, then I think we can accomplish this on the 18th, and we can move on in the time frame that's been delivered to us.
Okay. Director Sinella.
I'm not gonna let color ink get in the way of this, so I don't have strong feelings either way. But again, I do, getting back into what's actually written down, I really like how they come, their customer, an overall rate increase, in their case 5.8%, but ours will be 3.5%, was approved, for a typical single-family residential customer, your water bill will increase by 3.82 cents per month, effective, I mean, sentence number one, I mean, that's where ours goes into, like, why you're receiving this. Right. And I don't know if that's legally required, it wasn't for them, but let's just tell them.
The second paragraph is great too. I mean, the second, I'd look at this, we only had a chance to look at this today, so, but the second paragraph makes a lot of sense as well. We're a revenue-neutral public agency. That's important. Mm-hmm. It says it all in one sentence. To continue providing reliable, high-quality water service, the district must implement rate increases and pass through to its customers higher costs from wholesale water suppliers. A large percentage of this is direct pass-through from the County Water Authority. And I do like the third paragraph, although I don't think we'll be prepared to use that.
On September 4th?
Yeah, this district adopted a 5-year schedule of rates in compliance with applicable provisions of the law. The increase is within the limits contemplated in the 5-year schedule of rates. I don't think we're ready to do that, but I think that's a good one in there. And I think, third paragraph, and the whole thing, water wholesale raise their rates as they work to obtain new and more reliable supplies of water. It makes sense.
The fifth paragraph, for its part, the district continues to work to reduce internal cost. I mean, this is brilliant. Whoever wrote this.
Why recreate a wheel?
So I might be able to shed some.
Oh, staff's raising their hand.
I'd like to have Lucy address some of the issues, questions.
Yeah, and I apologize, I didn't see this before the meeting, but.
No, we save things to the last minute,
But
so we
so
can't make decisions.
the language, we can definitely borrow, I think a lot of the language can be borrowed from this, but this actually isn't a Prop 218 notice. This is, so President Martin, when you mentioned that inflationary increase, like the CPI adjustment, there's a specific requirement under Prop 218 in terms of how you implement that. And one of the requirements is you put the formula in your original 218 notice, but then each year afterwards, you just send a letter 30 days in advance that just gives an sort of informative. So that's why this looks a little bit cut down, but we can certainly, I think staff can definitely take language from this that you like and use that in place of the language that's in the proposed notice. But this is a different document than the 218 notice.
Well, the most important thing, the first paragraph is important, and I think the next most important thing, more than what we had on ours last time, is to show the agency where we sit compared to other agencies. That's what people want to know. Where are we? Am I paying more than Vista? How much is Vista? That's what they want to know. And they want to know it now. They want to see it.
Because misery loves company.
That's right. It's like, well, we're not as bad as Escondido. Well, we're not as bad as Vista. Well, we're worse than Carlsbad.
I think we got some really good specific feedback. We'll include the chart, the comparative chart. We'll delete the references to wastewater increases. We'll comb through the OTI and some of the other, and maybe incorporate some of the language. I don't see it cutting down from a four single-sided to a two single-sided. I think it's still going to be 2 pages on both sides. General Counsel Gilpin reminded me that the meeting this Wednesday is a special meeting, so we could probably try to add an item with just the 24-hour notice and add a review of a draft 218 notice to the meeting this Wednesday.
The one we did last time is this one here, and it's 3-sided. The 4th side is the mailing.
Right.
So it's 3-sided. So you're saying narrow it down to 3-sided? No.
No, well, I just mean, it's going to be, it's the thing that you have in your hands there's information on all 4 sides. And that's what I see it being for this one too.
But the second side is kind of just a bunch of pat me on the back.
But there's some requirements in Prop 218.
Some of it, yeah. As advisory rate adjustment, I know, but.
But we coordinated with our legal advisors to show what is required, and we want to make sure that we're not just having a subjective, well, I like this better than that, so let's go with
Let's go
this.
to 8 pages. The legal guys. All right. Thank you. I'm sorry we didn't have these ahead of time. We could have, we've already done these notes.
So if the board thinks it would be helpful, we could try to add an item to the meeting on Wednesday, and staff will work diligently between now and then to put together a revised Prop 218 notice that incorporates the comments we received today. The board won't be asked to do a final approval on the meeting Wednesday. The final approval will be the following Wednesday, but hopefully it'll streamline the meeting on the following Wednesday. So,
Can we get a little
No, it's
caricature of a white guy with a red ribbon running through it?
white guy or girl?
White guy. Well, I don't know which it was.
Well, we include androgynous characters.
A white thing, whatever it was. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was boy or girl. I have no idea.
All created equal.
Amen.
It was Pat from Saturday Night Live.
It's bad.
Okay, Director Snella.
So we started off this meeting talking about 1 year or not 1 year. Is that everybody cool with the 1 year before we leave?
Yeah. Yeah, then we can do multiple years after that.
I don't know why we just don't do a 2 year. We've never done a 1 year before. We've always done 2 years. So what makes this year special?
I think you mostly used to do 1 year. It's just recently you've done a 2 year.
That's right.
That's exactly right.
So
Well, I like to keep it consistent. Someone said that today.
are you,
Let's keep it consistent so people understand it comes every, is it 2 years the last one?
So if we could probably do a multiple year, but then you wouldn't be able to address some of the issues that we've talked about at the Finance Committee and part of the cost of service, which is like looking at things like agricultural rates and irrigation rates and pass-throughs and multi-year. There's things that, and the advice, I think it was Director Sinella said, we have to do a deep dive on a lot of these things. We don't have time to rush these things through, and we agree. So we think that there's a need to do a deeper dive on the cost of service study, but there's also a need to get the revenue increase that will come out of this. So I think it's both that we're doing going forward.
And do you think that deep dive can be accomplished in that timeframe? Because I don't see us even having our first meeting probably until February. And I remember, for those of you that were in the meeting, you probably recall too, I kind of got a little excited about all this and thought that there was some really good opportunities to explore for the district. But it was going to include, a great amount of public input, of course, board input, probably a number of meetings. Do you think that we can get that done in half a year?
I do. I mean, I think there's some things that require a deep dive, but I think numerous ones of them could be done at the same meeting. They could be done concurrently. It's all up to when does the board want to do it? If we want to take the summer to do this deep dive with a lot of public involvement and letting them know that there'll be increases in 2021, I think we can certainly do that.
That's my only concern when we talk about 1 year versus 2 years. I think that we just recently went through a cost of service study. And we adopted this new way that we were gonna do our rates, right? And just now, it's been a couple years, and we're being told that there's some opportunities for improvement, maybe some opportunities for some enhancement in some areas. And I just feel like, I don't wanna be looking at this again 2 years from now, as far as how we do our rates, right? It's one thing that I understand we have to notice when we're going to increase them, but we shouldn't have to, I think this is the second one in the short period, or this will be the third time we've done it in the short time that I've been on this board since 2014, that, again, why rush it? I think that we're really gonna be cramming a lot of this into a 6-7 month period, when if we just stretch it out and take the right time to do it, maybe we won't have to do it 3 times in 5 years. That's all I'm saying. And that's why I was thinking maybe a 2 year. That way we're capturing the necessary revenue, but we're also giving us some flexibility and some time to be able to really hammer out our cost of service study.
And I just like to add, I know that, we're the greatest water district ever, and we've got the greatest personnel ever. I agree with that. But in looking at OTI, they got their stuff together. Vista's been around longer than us, so they got their stuff together. They're doing every 5 years. And we're still thinking about doing 1 year or 2 years. Why aren't we doing 5 years?
Well, you'll recall that one of the reasons for doing the cost of service is to look at doing multi-year up to 5 year. That's what we talked about at the Finance Committee. That's the possibility. The timing to get that done was going to be so long that it would have pushed it into the summer next year, and it would have impacted us on an ongoing basis, the revenue that we get in, because our rates are frozen where they are right now until we make a change. We could take 5 years to go look at this if you want, but in each of those 5 years, we're stuck at the current rate.
10% increase.
Yeah, and then you'll be a 10-20% increase when you finally do
I don't
it.
think anybody's suggesting that we don't do an increase now.
No.
Yeah, just how many years?
Yeah.
Director Evans.
Thank you. I do remember that when we used to do it 1 year and we went to 2, and we did talk about going to 5, and we said we need a cost of service to do that. And I think the cost of service is important, and I'm sure the Finance Committee has pointed out many details that we could look into that could be of advantage, so I wouldn't want to rush that either. I understand why we're doing 1 year now, and I'm fine with that, but I'd like to suggest if we did this for 2 years right now, and we did a 3.5 this time, and a 3.5 next, we would be 0.11% below what you anticipated in 2021. So would we be able to make that small amount up fairly quickly in the next 5 years? We're talking probably 300 and some thousand out of. I don't know how fast you can do that.
Yeah, if you start talking 0.11%, I'm pretty sure we can absorb those kind of
Well, it
impacts.
said we were going to go 3.61, we assume, second year. So I'm just saying if we went 350 and we agreed to go 350 the next time, so it's 2 years.
Right.
And then we have a little bit longer, and the next time when we come forward with a 5-year, we've got the 5 years now to spread out and a cost of survey with opportunities to save, to gobble up that last 11%.
Wes, did you
Is
have
that
a
a
comment on that?
possibility? If the board's interested.
I think that it would be possible, but I think Mike has a comment. he'd like to-
Okay.
Yeah, if you're asking my recommendation, and I would recommend a 1 year. The reason is we have a couple of things that are changing. We have the SAR program, the temporary, help me out, Chris.
Special agricultural water rate.
Water rate that was supposed to sunset December of 2021, and they're redoing that. So there's an opportunity, we talked about irrigation customers and things like that, that by the summer, we should know what they're gonna do with the SAR rates, or with SAR, or with the agricultural. So to lock us in for 2 years, I think there's some changes coming up. The desal has a little bit of change into it where they added some extra charges to it that we would need to incorporate. There's other things that were in that 3.6%, like some of the, I think the UAL was into that. But the SAR, the desal, and some other things that aren't in that 3.6%. Obviously, the board can go, a 2 year right now, that's fine, we can absorb all that, but my personal feeling is that it'd be better to do a 1 year now, work alongside with Raftellus to do a multi-year for 2021 and beyond.
If I could just real quickly say, thank you. I appreciate you saying it's possible, and since I really have a great deal of respect for the finance department and administration here, and I'm trusting you to tell us what's best, I will say I don't suppose mine is that good, and I didn't. I sort of withdraw it. I want this to be done. It's okay. I'm asking, and that's what I want to know. Thank you for being right up front and telling us. I know it's a changing world, and I appreciate that. And I am fine with just the 1 year, personally, but I was trying to find a compromise. Thanks.
So basically, the reason then for not wanting to go to 2 years, that you realize that 3.61% is not reality. That's gonna be much higher than that.
Until we do a cost of service study, we wouldn't know. But a lot of the assumptions that were made, even though it was 2017, was based on 2016 data. So as you go out even further, now it's 4 years old data.
It doesn't go down.
It possibly could.
Well, geez,
Director Sinella.
what's going on with desal?
The only change was that they added I forgot what it's called, the TSOP.
Yeah, so one of the conditions in the permitting for the desal said that when the Encina power station stopped generating power, that the desal plant had to come up with a new intake structure. So that happened. The power plant stopped producing power, and now the Regional Water Quality Control Board is holding Poseidon responsible for building a new intake structure. The agreement that we have with Poseidon says those costs will get passed along to us. There's a cap on them, but it does get passed along. So that was, in addition to regular power increases and regular inflation increases, they now have this new intake structure increase. And I think it was like $130, about $130 per acre foot to get added to the desal price. So it wasn't unexpected. I was hoping it would be delayed, but it's part of the agreement.
So I guess then your question was?
I don't have
I
a
was
question.
comfortable with 1 year.
For the reasons I've already outlined, I came here in favor of a 2 year in my head, because I really think, I'll be shocked, let the record reflect, if we actually go through this cost of service the way I think we should, and have it done in time for next year. But I've expressed my views on that, and I also understand Mike's kind of brought up a couple of points that, that I had not known about, so that does make sense. I mean, you know, another approach we could do instead of doing 3.5 and 3.61 is we just do 3.55 and 3.55, right? But that's another option, but if you really think this desal and this ag rate is gonna be significantly different than what we have now, then, you know, we just move forward with 1 year, and we'll postpone it sometime in Q4 next year when we're not ready.
Does that suggestion have any merit, 3.55 for 2 years?
We could do a 3.5 and a 3.61. There's nothing that prevents us from doing that if that's what the cost of service study and revenue requirement
Mr. President.
are needed.
Well, no, I understand. I understand what you walked in here with, you know, the management game plan, but my question is, 3.55 and 3.55 doing a 2 year, just trying to get information. Getting a 2 year, I know that's not the game plan. So get out of the football huddle, now we're on the line, and someone else threw the first punch.
If we were doing a multi-year cost of service study and each year showed 3.6, 3.7, 3.4, 3.5, 3.2, we would probably just smooth it and say 3.5 every year. If it's not that much of, if the cost of service study doesn't show that it should be 5% 1 year, 2% the next, 8% the next, then you're deviating too much. But if they're all within that, I don't think there's anything, and I'll look to legal, that says you can't smooth out the rates if it's.
So 3.55, collecting that the first year gives you an edge for the second year to go down to 3.55, and you should be even. That's doable, isn't it, or is it not?
Certainly.
Yeah, I think
Don't look at the coach.
From a financial perspective, it's doable. Yeah, the numbers make sense. We have to look at it from a legal perspective.
Mr. President.
Yeah, Director Hernandez.
I'm a bit unclear as to why you're not feeling comfortable with just the 1 year and then doing it again next year with the full study from the survey.
Well, I think just as we ended up here tonight, under the gun, under the time gun, and we had lots of time to do this. It just didn't happen for whatever reason. And here we are under the gun for it. The same thing could happen next year, that we're not prepared for it, and we'll be under the gun yet again, and that's something, as you well know from years back, past history, is I always hated being under the gun. You gotta do it tonight, you gotta do it tomorrow, you gotta do it yesterday. And I just see that happening again, because it's happening today.
Well, I just can't believe, because we've already started the cost of survey, haven't we?
Yep.
Yeah, well, oh my God, that's, even if it, all through the summer, if we can't get this done in 9 months, we need a new consultant. That's that damn simple. So I see.
It's not the consultant, he wasn't hired a year ago.
No, he wasn't hired.
This is relative, he just got hired recently.
Well,
It's not
still,
him.
getting that done in the period that we have left should be absolutely doable. And I think the city manager told us it's doable, so I think we will, if we're under the gun, it will be our own fault for not doing what needs to be done because, for whatever reason. So personally, leaving it the way it is and moving on to the full cost of service study and do that deep dive over between now and summertime or whatever. And if that's the case, and we need a motion, I move to do just that.
You can't take a motion. Oh, can't.
No motion, it's a
Oh,
workshop.
we're not making
I'll
any
just
decision.
agree with
You're
you.
right.
It's a
We're
workshop.
not making a decision. Okay. Well, then that's my opinion.
You done? Director Elthorpe, do you have anything? Whatever will be, will be. I'm assuming after hearing from everyone, we're gonna go with 1 year. And hopefully get a cost of service done. But we had a lot of time to get it done this year. We had a very willing finance group to do it. It was just never presented to them. It's not their job. Anyhow, But I definitely would like to see this 218 reconfigured, made more sense. Let's use OTI, and let's look at 5 years for the study for next year. Same as OTI and other people have been around much longer than us. I don't know why we haven't used them in the past. In the past, they have brought things from other places that have been disregarded, but they've been a lot shorter 218 notice. And I understand it's not a full 218 notice, so I understand there needs to be some gobbledygook in there.
Yeah, I just want to be clear on that, Director Martin. The OTI notice you have is not a 218 compliant notice, so we have to make it 218. I'm happy to pull up OTI's 218 notice and show you that it's not a front and back page. I didn't see these until today, but I'm rather confident that it is not that simple, but I think Luffy will work with
No,
your
and
staff.
I agree, like, there is no disclaimer, as Director Evans brought up, as to how to, that's not in here, so I understand that it's not. But the format of it, how quickly it gets to the point, what it shows, that's important. And then you have to have all your legalities on there, and I understand that. But to make it as concise and easy to read as possible, remembering the first page is most important. Most people will never get to the second page. So the first page has got to tell them everything, in my opinion. Okay, anyone else, anything else on the subject? No, so we're going to come back and we're going to look at it on the 18th.
Well, we'll try to add an item to review the revised Prop 218 notice on the 11th.
On the 11th?
Yeah, so it's a
Okay.
special meeting, so it has a 24-hour noticing requirement. I'll work with Diane. We can notice it so the board can discuss it and we can present whatever updates we have time to put in between now and Wednesday.
Okay. Any other reason we're here?
That's it.
That's it. That was simple. We'll, time is now 2:38. Our meeting is officially adjourned.